Mwasibire muta, mwasibye mutya, amahoro, agandi, byaibo, habari gani, muraho, sangonini, kopango, odeo. For those of you who are wondering what that was, these are some of the various local greetings found in East Africa's diverse languages. Welcome to She Center, the female podcast, where I dive into the issues and experiences that affect women everywhere. I am your host, Resti Kansime, and I am passionate about creating a safe space for women to share their stories and triumphs. I want to thank you for tuning into my podcast, and I would love for you to join our community and stay connected with us beyond this episode. You can find us on Instagram at _She Center _podcast, and follow us on Facebook at the She Center Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and hit that follow and like button on our social media to be part of the conversation. Welcome back to you, my She Center community. Thank you for giving me time off last week to take a breath. It was a well-deserved break, and I'm happy to be back. A special welcome to my new listeners. Thank you for joining us, and welcome to the community. I'll start out today by reading a quote from Maya Angelou. It says, "Any book that helps a child to form a habit of reading, to make reading one of his deep and continuing needs, is good for him." Reading, as we know, opens the door to a world of imagination, especially for children. Cultivating a reading culture from infancy is very crucial. It offers endless possibilities for growth and exploration. So a few weeks ago, I think 2 episodes back, in my special birthday edition episode, I reflected on my experience working under a USAID-based project focused on early grade reading. My time in the remote villages of Western Uganda illuminated the stark reality that reading remains a luxury for many children. At the age of 14, you wouldn't believe that some are unable to read simply due to lack of opportunity. Today, I am thrilled to spotlight 2 incredible individuals who are transforming the reading landscape for children in Uganda. First is my dear friend Brenda Arinda, who will be joining us very soon on the She Center podcast. She is known as Lighting Bulbs Education on Instagram. Please check her out. She is making waves in her innovative approach to education. And another person who inspires me with regards to education and reading or early grade reading is my guest today, who is joining us. Her name is Mago Hasfa, the visionary founder of Read to Learn Foundation and the Book Drive. I met Mago at the university through friends of friends, and I would say she's one unforgettable person. Mago is she's literally a force of nature. Like when she walks into a room, you will know that she was there. And that's something that always stood out to me when I thought about her. So I reached out to her because I've been seeing all the amazing work that she's been doing. And I figured it would really be interesting to know how someone like Mago, who I never got a chance to sit down and speak to while we were at the university, came to be, or what happened to her, I would say in this case, how she got to be so passionate about early grade reading and childhood development. Her dedication to literacy development in Africa is truly inspiring. I have been following her for quite some time, and I am in awe of the work that she's doing. So please tune in to hear Mago's remarkable journey and the impactful work she is leading across the continent. Stay tuned until the end to discover more about her incredible initiatives. And all I can say is let's celebrate the power of reading and education together. Enjoy the episode. Hi, Mago. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I love your hair. I love the boldness. It says it's screaming bold.
Oh my God. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much for making the time. I know you're busy out there doing a lot of good work, and I appreciate that you managed to take out a little bit of time from your schedule to
Yeah.
do this with me, and I appreciate that. Like I was telling you before, I'm really in this first year of my episode of my podcast. My goal is to answer the question, "What happened to you?" I read the book that say I don't know if you know about it. It's called "What Happened to You." It's by Oprah and a psychiatrist called Bruce Perry. A
Mm.
person who, if you're in early grade reading, it's something that you might actually find very interesting because
Mm-hmm.
it says so much about how children's like futures are hugely impacted by their childhood from 0 to 5 years old, like everything that happens in between that age. I'm sure you already know this based on the fact
Yeah.
that you're a specialist in the field. Yeah. So they kind
Yeah.
of speak more
Right.
about this. And when I was starting out this platform, I was like, I started from me. I'm guessing everyone starts from, I created this company because of me and me. So I started from me. I was like, okay, um, journaling, I was like, this and this happened to me. I've turned out like this. And seeing it from a positive perspective, I was like, you know what? Maybe this stuff happened for a reason. Like, there's a reason why I went to boarding school my whole life so that I
Yeah.
can connect to people who are different from me. There's a reason why I was raised by only single women. Like, my mom is a single mom. Literally, almost every person who raised me is a woman, and I have this strong passion for women. Like, whatever happens, if I'm watching a movie, I'm always rooting for a woman in everything that happens. I never see the perspective of the man. So
Mm-hmm.
because of that, I started to see my life not in a negative perspective of, yeah, I went through this bullying and this. I was like, when I read the book, I realized everything happened to me for like, not okay. I'm a Christian, and I feel like it happened to me for a reason. But the book made me realize that all the things that, like, my behavior and who I am right now, on how I see the world, is hugely impacted by how I was raised growing up. So I was
Yeah.
like, okay, it's interesting. So my first episode, I shared like my story of
Mm-hmm.
how I turned out the way I am. And since then, I've been talking to different women. I've been picking them out personally. Different women who I feel have inspired me. I'm sure I've told you this before when I, like, on your comments or something. People who have inspired me with the work that they are doing. Because, sometimes you look at someone, you're like, this person really has, like, they are really blessed. Like, this is their purpose. So I've been
Mm.
reaching out to such people and asking them to share their stories, because in many cases you might be there with your red hair, passionate about books, and people are like, "Banage Mago abadechi." Yeah?
Yeah.
What's wrong with
Yeah.
Mago? What's like? I don't want. This book says you shouldn't ask people what's wrong with you when they
Mm-hmm.
act out, when they do certain things. You should simply ask what happened to you, and by
Wow.
asking this question, you simply open this person to letting you know, hey, this is what happened to me when I was growing up, and that's why I love books so much. So,
Yeah.
Mago, please tell us why you love books so much. What happened to you?
But that's so
Answer the question.
amazing.
Yeah, so you answer the question. What? Please share about your childhood experiences, reflect on them, and let us know how you think it might have impacted the world that you see right now, like how you see the world and who you are
Yeah.
right now. Yeah.
Well, first of all, I really think that topic is amazing. I feel like this is something that I'm going to be even asking, like even when you go on a date, you're like, tell me what happened to
What
you.
happened to you? I
Yeah.
know. Yes.
It helps you know a
It's a
lot
good
about the person.
conversation starter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, I think it's a really good conversation starter.
Yeah.
Um, Let me see. I think one, reflecting on my childhood, I feel like when I was, I think like around 11, 13, I used to go like in the neighborhoods and volunteer to do kids' hair, even babysit and all. So I think with children, I've always like really liked
Love
children. I've just
children.
playing with children and anything in that capacity. Like I've always been that person. I used to think I was going to open like a kids salon, but all my dreams have been around there, like kids and all. Then, um, where my passion stems from for reading is, I don't know, it's been confusing a bit. A few months ago, we were at a funeral of my cousin, and my uncle walks up to me and he's like, "How are you doing? Oh, we're so proud of the work that you're doing." And can you imagine when we were younger, your dad, so my dad passed away about 10 years ago. But then he
Sorry.
said, your dad we used to move in the buses back then, and we would only have newspapers to read, and he would make sure everyone on the bus had to read a newspaper. And
Oh
then I
wow.
grew up, like also I used to see him writing and doing stuff, but I never thought about it. So he goes like, you know what? I'm so proud of you because it's so same to your dad. Like you're passionate about creating a reading culture and making sure children are reading and all. So that also
Yes.
kind of made me think of my childhood again because I was thinking,
Yeah.
so this is not something that came out of the blue. It's probably maybe parts of my childhood that I don't remember, but it was
Yeah.
there. There's a, I felt like, oh, there's a connection to where this comes from.
Yeah.
But yeah, growing up, I didn't go to school until I was about 10, going on 11. So when I did go, I struggled a lot. I was in Kitante Primary, but I struggled with reading, and I came off like I was so dumb. But then in a year, I learned how to read and then how to write. And for somebody who joined from P5, I finished P7, and then I performed really highly.
You
But
didn't study the lower classes?
nothing, no nursery, nothing.
Oh my god. Is there
Yeah,
any specific reason for this that you'd like
yeah,
to
it was,
share for that?
family struggles
Ah,
and
okay. Ah,
yeah,
okay, okay.
things
But
like that.
wow. Wow. That's amazing. You should share this on your platforms because kids who are going through this need to know that it's not a limitation like studying at
Yeah,
P1 nursery that stuff. Wow.
nothing, P5. And I remember the first term, we were 98 kids, and I was 98 out of 98. But because I didn't know how to read, I went back home saying, oh, imagine I was the best. I was 98 out of 98. Yeah, you can imagine what followed after that.
Yeah.
But basically, in 1 year, I learned how to read, and then I performed better in school and all. And then I just found myself like loving reading and all. So for me, then that became an anchoring point because like
Yeah.
all throughout life, even when I joined secondary school, I took that as my pride moment. So I forgot like everything that had happened before that. I was like, oh my God, the day I learned how to read is when my life changed, and that became my story. So when
Yeah.
I finished university, I had a job, I remember, as a human resource manager. I started my first company. I did a bit of there and there, but you know, when you do stuff and you don't feel like you're settled, like you don't feel like this is
Yeah.
what you're meant to do and everything. And then one day I was approached by somebody and he asked me if I wanted to join to do children's books. And I thought, children's books, like how can I even do a children's book? I've never written, I didn't study, I did literature, but you know, I've never written, like, and then I do human resource stuff and trainings. But then something, something inside me, I think it stems from the fact that I really loved reading. And then
Yeah.
when we're discussing, I was like, I hate that when I visit libraries, there are no, African storybooks. You find all these donated books and all, and people expect children to fall in love with those books, but you like
Yeah.
what you relate to. When you open and you see environments and people and things that you
Yes,
relate
yes.
to, it's much better.
Chimamanda says this as well.
Really?
Yes,
Imagine.
Chimamanda said that she used to read books of white people, and like she always imagined their world. There's this. She said there's something that
Yeah,
they would always
imagine.
put in it, and there's some book that she read, and there was something to be eaten, like something they were eating that was commonly eaten in America. And she said every time her parents traveled to America, she would ask them to bring it for her. I don't remember what it was, but she said when she eventually ate it, she was like, "It didn't even taste as good as it tasted when I was reading the book." But if you listen to
Yeah.
most of her speeches, she always talks about how she also always felt like reading books about white people's lives, like they always describe blue eyes and flowing hair and
Yeah.
stuff like that. She didn't see
Rapunzel, the
herself. Yeah,
castles. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and I think if you look at it in that perspective, like you grow up, even the boys that you like, you grow up imagining a Prince Charming has blue
Yeah.
eyes and flowing hair, and you're like, we don't have these things on the street. So basically, I want to marry a white person.
Yeah. No, but that's
Yeah,
so
you're
true.
right.
That's very influential.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I like that comment as well, that you always imagine the white people world. Even you imagine that success has to be found in America or in Europe.
Yes,
Like
Yes,
Yeah, it
yes,
can't be in Africa because there's nothing about there. Like no person comes from your country who has built big things. Or
yes,
anything that looks good has to be outside. Yeah.
yeah.
No,
And the
that's
books
really
that we were reading in literature all had war, like colonialism. I don't know
cool.
why they always chose such books in literature. Like all our literature books were, all things fall apart and, and
Yeah.
all this stuff. There wasn't really like romantic stories,
Oh,
even
you'll
the ones
only
of
find them
Chintu.
outside. Yeah.
Yes, yes, that's true. That's true.
Actually, that
So
was
what
a story.
happened when this guy? Pardon?
Yes. Yeah, so we started to talk and then we're like, you know what? I think it will be so we did a test book. And when we did the book and I went and started reading it with children, you could see their eyes light up. They'll be like, that's my mom, that's my dad, and Wafe and all. And it's really beautiful to see. And I feel
Yeah.
like even children would take care of such books because these books have their mom, their aunt, their home. It has like things that they can relate to. So they're more likely to do that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's how I got into writing and I started off that journey. And of course, you start and you first doubt it. You're like, is this imposter syndrome? Am I really an
Yeah.
author? Yeah,
True.
and then
True.
then you just work on it along the way and embrace it. And the defining moment that I told you, like when my uncle approached me and told me about that, then I was just like, so this was there in my childhood. Like I might not
Yes.
remember it, but there was something there. I grew up with a dad who loved reading, who emphasized the reading culture. As
Yes.
much as it's
Yeah.
not there in my memory, it's like people can tell me about this, and I'm like, wow. So those are like the defining moments. I think like those two things, the fact that I took long to join school, but then when I did, it was reading that changed my life. I'm always like, no, I'm not going to see another kid have to go and reach maybe age even 7 and 6 without, reading your first book and,
Yes.
having your big dream and all. Yeah.
Yeah. Let it
So
not be a limitation to moving forward. I
no,
love
no, at
that.
least not
Yeah.
books. Like at least
Yes.
not books. Let books be everywhere, and books open up your eyes. They change your perspective. They change your
Yeah.
grades. They change your outlook on life.
Yes.
So
Yeah. Even
much
your
that
confidence. Yeah. Even your
yeah,
confidence.
exactly. The way
Yeah.
you think, the way you talk, literally everything about you. So if you
Yeah.
grow up with that culture, you're more likely. It's rare that somebody would grow up without a culture of reading and then they later fall in love. It does happen, but then it's very rare. But if you grow up in an environment of books, you grow up, appreciating this.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
That's
so I
true.
feel like, every kid, no matter where they come from, at least one day you tell a story of I had my first book at this, I read my first book
Yes.
here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you read stories when you're still young, I think it shapes who you are, like, not who you are in particular, like because you're always changing, but I think your memories or how you look at life kind of helps you a lot. There are some kids who you speak to and they're really young, and you're like, wow, this kid has a huge perspective on life. Like
On
they're not
life, yeah.
limited to something. But sometimes you can speak to a kid and you're like, okay, this kid probably is only watching TV because that's all they're talking about. But person who is reading, there's a way their imagination is much like when they're
Yeah.
telling you a story, there's something like they're creating the imagination. It's not something that they saw because they're imagining the color red, they're imagining the smell, even the
Everything.
way you tell the story as a reader. It's like
Yeah.
you bring someone into your experience. You're like, yes, her hair was red, like they were smelling good. You're like, how do you smell something from what you're reading? So it's good
Yeah.
to imagine that stuff. Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
amazing.
That's
So
really,
I
really
would
nice.
like to ask something personal. I met you at uni, and you were
Yeah.
always this bold girls who I don't know if your
Fantastic.
if your employees know this. Like you were
Oh
this
my God.
bold girl
No,
who
no,
was like, who was able, like you're someone who could be dared to do anything. Like you are bold.
yeah.
Where does this come from? Where does this come from? Even your hair is screaming, I'm bold.
Nails,
I'm bold,
everything.
I'm loud, I'm
Like,
unapologetically me. Where does
yeah.
this come from? Because I feel like it's easy to love books. Like I know so many people who love books, but
Yeah.
they cannot go out there and make other people like them as much as they do. It takes
Yeah.
boldness for you to speak. Banange kids don't have a high attention span. Their attention span is so low. That means for you to go and sit down with children, the children you're talking to are children in that age who right now there is a cocoa melon and all this stuff, yeah?
Yeah.
So if you're
Very
trying to
fun.
encourage them to read, that means you have to be someone who is, when you're trying to encourage someone to do something that you're passionate about, your character also comes into play. That means if I walk into a room of kids, like from the beginning, I'm going to be like, either I'm loud or I'm just going to be quiet, and they'll be like, can we really pay attention to this person? So maybe you can
Yeah.
just share about how that Mago came up to be, that bold Mago who just does like whatever she feels like she can do and is aggressively her.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about this Mago. Where does she come from?
Oh my God. First, I think before I even get to that, I was listening to a podcast, but then I've also been attending several seminars. You know, you walk into a room and it's a seminar and it's full of like all these entrepreneurial women and all, and then like my red hair, long nails, kitenge
Yeah,
up to the
people are
front,
like,
and
whoa.
yeah, and I always wondering what does she do. So then when I get to speak and I'm like, I'm talking about children and literacy, I think everyone is always like, what? Because you know
I
when you walk
know.
into a
I thought
space,
we were going to
people
come and talk about makeup and hair.
fashion, things like that, you know.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And then too, I was listening to, a podcast about, it was talking about, kids who grow up as rebellious and you be known as the
Yeah.
black sheep and all. And I think for me, I've always been like that kid, very like big headed. I'm going to do things my way and all. Though as I've grown, it has kind of like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know. Life tames you as you grow. You're not as wild as you
Yeah,
were as
true.
a child. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was very much like a tomboy, climbing trees. When it was time for this, it was time for that. And then I think as I grew up into a woman and a girl, I just either I became rebellious or I just wanted things a certain way, and the society, the environment I
Was
was in
limiting
wouldn't
you.
allow it. Exactly. So then
Yeah.
instead of adjusting and fitting into the environment, I instead rebelled the environment more.
Yeah.
So then it
Yeah.
made me stand out in every situation. You stand out
Yeah.
here, you stand out at school, you're the troublemaker, you're the one who dresses differently, you're the one who does this. And I
Yes.
remember, I think I even carried this into uni, and I think it's just been over the last several couple of years growing up and thinking, oh, okay, I can tame this, I
Yes.
can tame that.
Life humbles you.
Yeah, life humbles you, and you're like, but I think for me, from a childhood perspective, it comes
Yeah.
from the fact that I grew up in an environment that was very open. Like we used to be out all the time, and then I was around boys and doing very many risky things. So it gave me that kind of mind that I
Yes.
couldn't be tamed in. I was always like fighting for this, trying to do this and that. And also I think
Yes.
the biggest challenge was actually growing up. I think there's a time when I was in between senior six and uni where you feel like I need to fit in. I need to change who I
Yes.
am
Yeah.
so that people cannot misjudge me, so that this and this, because people sit you down. I remember my aunties used to sit me down and say, Happy, because at home they call me Happy. They're like, Happy, if you just cool down a bit. Like, if you just,
Man,
yeah, if
I
you
have
just
gotten
cool
that speech myself a million times. It's
I
like,
can
cool.
imagine.
How?
Exactly. How do I calm down? But it's like if you just calm down a bit, life would be more simpler for you. You wouldn't get in trouble. You wouldn't
I
offend so many people.
know.
So I think there was that phase where I tried so much to fit in,
And
and
it
it did.
wasn't working.
Yeah, it didn't work. I was just not fitting in. So then, growing into a woman, you read and you listen to podcasts and you understand that it's okay to be different. Sometimes,
Yes.
yeah, sometimes you will not be like everyone else. You'll not think like everyone else. You'll not look like
Yes.
everyone else, and that's okay. Like it's okay to just be
Yeah.
different and just have like the right motive in your life. Like, what am I doing in this world? Am I doing something that betters me and betters the world? But then I
Yes.
don't have to change who I am to do
Yes.
what I want to do. Yeah. And even what's funny is that at least you know that kids they like they like people like who look like
I
because
was
every
just
teacher
about to say
says
that when you were done. I was just about to
like
say that. I was
they
just
say
about to
that
say that.
nails, they say
Children
that
don't like people who are too serious. They don't like
yeah,
people who are too serious. Like you have to be
yeah,
like you have to think like them for you to be able to connect
uh-huh.
with them.
Yeah,
Yes.
play with them, sit down, like be like, I'm not above you guys. I'm just like here, and I'm your
Yes.
cool auntie. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to embrace that because it gives us a good foundation to start building a relationship. But then also that's me. Like when you started talking and you're like, in uni you were bold and like this, and I didn't even look at it like that. So I'm like, see, it's actually good that I've remained
Yeah.
who Mago has always
You
been.
are still the same. Like if I found you quiet and with black hair and blue clothes,
You'll
I'll
be
be like, what happened to Mago?
like, what is this
For me,
corporate
Mago
life?
is always like something on you has to always be saying, yes, I'm here. Pay attention.
No, but that's really nice. Like I never
I
even
like
looked at
that. Yeah.
campus experience like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you see yourself at campus? Were you thinking that you were trying to become over?
I think
Because
I thought I was trying to be calm. I also thought like,
what?
most of these guys don't understand me, but it's okay. But
I
it's good
think
that
like
people saw it in a bold kind of way.
you are like I think I met you through the simmers, right?
Yes.
And I remember like the simmers just be like, yeah, that's Mago. Like they were always, that person where you're like, you always have to explain for someone. Like you're like. But see, the thing is, I completely relate to what you're saying. Like I grew
Hmm.
up stubborn. Like stubborn doesn't even describe the word stubborn. Like I just felt like you said, like I think kids who grow up exploring always have like a really exciting life. For me, my holidays used to be like in the village, and in the village, there's so much to do. There are pigs, there are dogs, there are cows. Like there is trees to climb. There's this. My grandma is like, women don't climb trees. I'm like, says who? I'm
Yeah.
up on the tree. I'm doing this, and I always hang out with the boys also because I felt like my sister was boring me doing cooking stuff. I'm like, "Ugh, that stuff is boring. I just want to like explore the world. And then when you go to school, they're trying to fit you into, and I was in a Catholic school, so there's
Wow.
this Mary, like you have to be a certain way, and
Yeah.
I just couldn't. And on VD, my mom, I would be like in P6, and teachers from P1 are coming to complain about that girl is like this, stubborn like this. And when you get to a point, you try so much to be the person who they're telling you to be. Like there are
Yeah.
those exemplary kids they always use at school. She's like this, her uniform
Why
is
can't you
always
be
tucked
like this
in.
one?
Hey, why
Yeah.
can't you be like that? And for once you're like, you know what, today morning, God, I want to wake up and be like that person. But something inside of you is rejecting that person. You're like, you can try to be quiet in class, and it's like, man, I just
How?
have to. By the end of the day, you've changed your mind. You're like,
Yeah.
let me be myself. Like when you're growing up and people put all those limitations on you, they can
Yeah.
actually hugely impact the person that you are because we are all unique. Yeah? We are all unique individuals, and who we are going to turn out to be. Like, for instance, those people always end up being in management, They are
Yeah.
like management. I don't know, like that. Even leaders have to kind of be vibrant a little bit. So you're limiting. So basically, we will not have musicians. We will not have actresses. We are not going to have
Artists.
all these other kinds of, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, all these other kinds of people because you've put me in a box from when I'm young, and that is sometimes very traumatizing because, like, in schools they beat you.
Yeah.
So I really relate to what you have said because, man, I tried. There are times where I would try, and even up to now, like I always have to remind myself, be you, and I'm like, okay, now there's an older version of me, but it's
Yeah.
only because of, like, it's not because someone told me be like this. It's
You
like
grew into
when
it.
yeah, exactly, when you mature, there are some things where you're like, okay, when I'm with
Yeah.
my people, I can be 100% me. When I'm
Yeah.
around people, like, you learn like you get emotional intelligence, you learn to study people.
Definitely.
And I have found many times that I also relate too much to kids. because I am as playful as they are. Like I easily blend in with children. When I see kids, I'm like them. They actually don't even respect me. They think I'm their age mate or something like that. Yes, because when
Yeah.
you're talking to kids and you're like playful and everything, they always think, this is someone who can understand us. And when you're speaking to adults who you find are very serious, you just have to learn that emotional intelligence. Okay, this person is like this, but to remind yourself to be yourself. So this
Yeah.
brings me to the question. I know you found yourself in spaces where you have been probably expected to be a different kind of person because maybe
Yeah.
you're like around serious people trying to talk about your work. How do you deal with such situations?
How do I even deal with that? I think I've been at two key ones. One was at a ministry event for planning for. It was the International Day of Literacy, and the whole time we had been having meetings, but they were virtual. And also the other half, my team was having the meetings. So the first day when I show up for the meeting, I'm there, the meeting goes on, I give ideas and all. And then at the end, the gentleman says, oh, by the way, this is Mago. Everybody was just like, I'll even tell you, some of them even made comments of, hey, Kanaka Kazi. Like, it's a shocker. Like, this small person with red hair and all those nails and
They
what
expected they
they
expected
expected,
yeah, but I love
yeah.
that. I love that.
Then you
Break the
yeah, the
ceiling.
organization, they expect like, the founder of Rich to Learn Foundation will be here and all. But I like this because one, I like the reaction of people. It's for me, it's very funny and it's like, yeah, yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah.
And then two is that you also realize that people will respect you because of the value and how you present yourself in spaces like this. So it's
Yes,
sometimes you
yes.
think so much into it's about how I look and how I show up, but also in most cases, it's about your voice and your value that you present when you're in
Yeah.
these spaces.
Yeah.
Yes. So when
Yes,
you open your
yes.
mouth to speak, people will listen. How eloquent are you? How valuable is your input at the moment, and then what can you do? Then after that, they will,
Yes.
they start to look like beyond the hair, like, oh, she looks like this, but there's something behind the
Yes.
madness. I've actually gotten that
Exactly.
comment a lot, that Margot, you're
Yeah.
mad, but there's something behind the madness. But yeah, those are spaces like
Yeah.
that. Then the second space, I think I had gone for the Mandela Washington Fellowship in the US, and arriving, you see people's profiles and everything. And then for me, I was the completely opposite of what my work is. So again, people were confused. Does she do books? Does she do modeling? Is she an artist?
Is she going
Again,
to
when I
open that function for us by singing?
yeah, what is she going to do? But then again, when I started to talk about my business and what I'm doing and my plan for the fellowship, then again people
Yeah.
start to relate to you differently. They talk the way they change, the way they talk to you, all these. And
Yes.
I really love it, and I think if anything, I will keep remaining that because it's good, to show people that we are more than what we look like.
True.
Yeah,
True.
like some, we
Yeah.
we always say that, like, don't judge a book by its cover, but as a natural human being thing, you can't help it. But when you look at a person, think, what does this one
Yes.
do?
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's there, and we can break it. Like when you go to schools, I remember I used to go to schools, and probably they look at it like, now what does this one do? But at least now we've done several events in the international schools, and it's the perspective and the approach is different. They know, Margot, she does children's books, she's good with
Yeah.
reading with kids. Doesn't matter how she shows up with what hair and what nails. So it's good to show that in
That's true.
reality it can be possible. It's not just an illusion, that don't just judge a book by its cover, because that's a human tendency to just judge. But yeah, those are key rooms I
That's
think
true.
I've been in. And also I think when people
That's
sometimes
very
come to
true.
our office and somebody's like, oh, I know
Who
sometimes I'm
is the
like, that's
own?
our boss, and somebody's like, okay, what is going on here?
that's
Yeah.
that I really like what you've described. It has made me think about a book I read by Adam Grant. It's called Think Again. And I think what you're describing right now, because he encourages people to like not always just look at the surface of certain things, but to think through it. And in what you're explaining is like, it's good. It's really hard to find someone who doesn't get, okay, you can get affected as a person, but what does it do to you, to your personality or to your identity? That is the most important thing. You can be hurt that someone has looked down on you, but you should use that to step up and be like, let me show you that my hair has nothing to do with my brain. Let me show you that my clothes have nothing to do with my personality. And in Adam Grant's book, he encourages like, you have to, like, when you look at someone, like, I'm just using his argument to explain what you've just described. It's like when you look at someone, in your head you're thinking, this person is good, but you have to think again. Like, think again. It might help you to get a better perspective. Do not get stuck in a perspective of back in the day, all people who read books used to look like this. Someone comes out these days with a PhD, but their nose is pierced. They have like 1 million tattoos, and they do not look like what it is that they're saying. I love to see people who are breaking the ceiling. Like, I want you to be so different, and like leave me to think. Because if you come and you're reading books and you're wearing a suit, your hair is black and everything, then I'll just be like, the typical. But if you come, then I'm like, there's something interesting about this specific person. And the people who mostly judge you are the people who are wanting to be like you. They're also in that same box. They're in that box and they want to be free, but they're like, how did Mago make it like to be free? Because when they invite you for such events like that, in many cases, people try to be who they are not. Like, they will buy suits, they will do their nails, like cut them short and everything, and try to fit in into the society they've called you in. But you walk and talk to a minister and talk to a whatever, and you're like, no, I'm coming the way I am. Like, this is my profession, this is how I started it, I'm going to be me. The people around that person might be like, hey, please try to, but that person, I think, will appreciate the fact that you didn't try to camouflage into a different person. You were yourself. And that's amazing. I think even when you're talking to children, that's good, because you show them you can be yourself. If children see a person with red hair, they're like, so I don't actually, to be a smart person, I don't have to be, with black hair and straight or relaxed or something like that. So that's really amazing. Okay, so I wanted you to speak a little bit about, you said how you had some challenges when you started P5. Can you just kind of like speak more about this? How your experience was exactly, because you just said, it was challenging, but then I learned how to read books.
Let me see, how was it challenging? I couldn't basically read anything, write nothing. And, when you're in a class like that, kids can be like, which school is this one coming from? Like, they can't even, how are they in P5 and they can't do this and they can't do that. So it also kind of like diminishes your confidence. And then also makes you like, I think I became also, however much I was rebellious, also became enclosed a bit. Like, you also start to wonder, am I stupid? How come I can't do this? But then I think because of my ways and the way that I was, that when I don't understand something, or I feel like I would try something and I would try it with all my might. Like, I've always been like that kid. If I'm going to climb a tree, I'll fall down and come back with injuries, but I will not stop until I get to the branch that I'm going to get to. So I think even when it came to school, it was like that, and I was just like, these guys, I'm not stupid. I'm going to do this and this. And then I was playful and all. But then when I would sit down and learn how to read, like with my aunt, I remember I would sound the letters, and then my target was, I'm going to show you, like, I'm going to move from this
to prove them wrong.
Like, you know what, I'm going to show you that I can do 3 years where you did 7 years. That kind of mentality and attitude that is very like strong-headed. So in instances where I would have been like not confident, I think I came at it more in no, I'm gonna show them, like, I'll fight this and all. So kind of like also increase my being rebellious, because if you can prove that you can stand against the system and win, then as a kid,
Yes.
whenever you push boundaries and win, you push more and more and more.
Yes, yes. So
Yeah.
your character came in hand.
It really came in, and I think when I finished primary 7, and my teachers were all shocked, because they were like, impossible, like everyone thought it was impossible. They were all like, there is no way you can pass primary, and I was even among the top best. And then they started to say to
Wow.
me that, that means you must be really intelligent. So then, in an arrogant kind of way, I think I took it
Yeah.
on, and I was just like, me, I'm even intelligent. I'm just going to do whatever I want. I know how to read. But then
Yeah.
also, I think, I don't know, it also changed me when I started to read. I think reading changed, kind of cooled me off and taught me different perspectives. And then that experience also showed me, like, life can be challenging, but it's at the end of the day, it comes down to what do you want. So I think from that age, I had to decide, like, what do I want? Do I want to be known as the Mago who's stupid, who can't do this and this? Or do I want to be known as the one who did it even when everybody thought it wasn't
Yes,
possible?
yes.
Yeah. And yeah, so it kind of,
Yeah, that's
was like
that's interesting. There is the reason why I asked is because you had a very huge challenge, man. P5, that's about 10 years or something like that, man.
yeah,
At that
going with
age, the
11.
bullying is on another level because we've learned some English. You've come out of these early stages. Even if you're in the village, you've come out
Yeah.
of the first years where they're teaching you your local language, and now you're actually like, yes, you're preparing to for semi-candidate, and in many cases that can put down someone's confidence.
Yep.
If someone tells you you can't read, it can put down your confidence. So for someone to fight through that, like how you find someone, and then, like when you're like fighting someone and they tell you, man, you don't know where I've been, don't try me. That's always to show you, I have
Yeah.
fought worse battles than just you. There's someone I know who grew up here in Germany, and they were in Uganda. And every time someone would try to like argue with them or fight with them, she was like, "Man, I have faced racism at its worst. You don't know where I've been. I will beat you up."
Don't
So,
try me.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So in your
Yeah.
case, you're like, when you're growing up, I'm guessing from from where you're coming from, you enter this class at P5. I'm just like having an image. Yeah, I imagine myself like everything in like in images. You're coming into this class, you're already bold, like you have this confidence of go, hey, I'm cool, yeah. And then you get into the class and this one thing, but you're like, whether those kids who would be in class and they can't even speak English properly, and
Yeah.
and yet you can't put them down for some reason. Like you come with your English and they're like, you take your English there, I'm still the coolest person here. So coming from that at a really young age, I can see how growing through life, you're like, man, I faced this challenge and I came out of it with my head high. Like it didn't destroy me. So I'm going to continue facing this. And I completely understand how you could end up in a situation where you're like, I don't want any child to ever be where I was, because I know how much less people looked at me because of the
Yeah.
fact that I couldn't read. So that makes to me a lot of sense, and that's something I never knew. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I don't know if you've ever shared this during your stories on
No.
your socials, because that's a very if you're starting out talking to kids, for instance, who don't know how to read, and you're trying to tell them books, they will be like, man, books are for people who are a certain way. And you're like, no, I was like you when, like, I for someone in P3, you'd be like, me, I was at P5, I didn't know how to read. And you're like, what? So it's like a testimony to something. That's pretty cool. Okay, so please share about your work that you're doing. I would just like my listeners to kind of like get an idea, because I really think it's really amazing work. I have another friend, I don't know if you know her, she's called Irina Brenda, but for her goal is to, like, she's selling books, but she's selling them not just to sell, but she's really, really passionate about kids learning how to read. So her books are she's mostly targeting books for young kids. So she tries to make sure, like, even she just had a baby recently, and she's trying to make sure that her kids and they read for their baby, so that when she grows up reading books. And I once told her
Yeah.
about you. I was like, oh, you should check out this girl Mago. She also does something that you're doing, although for our organization is like basically, you're doing more or less the same stuff, which is really amazing. So maybe you can share more about this, because there might be people out there who are passionate about the same stuff, but or maybe their children trying to read, they're struggling not to read. So just share about the work and some of the challenges maybe you've faced, and how you've been able to encounter this, to fight against them, maybe some stereotypes in society, being that, man, from Africa, books and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I see you always like telling people, to invest in books, and how you're doing all this in the ghetto as well, because no one can really ever think, let's go to the ghetto and give these kids books. Your first thought is, let's give these guys money to come out of poverty. But for you, you're like,
Yeah.
no, let's teach them how to read. So can you please share about this?
So we have it's a two-in-one organization. But first it's called Read to Learn, and then this one is the one that focuses on in the communities. So communities, we're talking about slums, refugee camps, community libraries, and organizations like that. What we do here is we empower young people between 13 to 18 to become what we call literacy champions. So they go through a fellowship, they become literacy champion, and then they lead interventions at a grassroots level in their communities. So once you finish the fellowship, they open what you call a book clinic that targets age 2 to 12. And in a book clinic, they teach reading, writing, and spelling. They get a basket or a library donation, and then they begin teaching. The reason for this is, one, to give the young people in the community a sense of responsibility, to know that, okay, my community is like this, but to make change, education is key. To improve education, that means the young ones around me, even if I didn't get that opportunity, but the young ones around me should learn how to read so that they perform better in school. So basically, Read to Learn, we focus on those kinds of communities to empower young people. But then also, like I told you, to create, because these are the communities where you find like kids start school very late, but also there is no culture of reading. There is no home that you're going to come to and they tell you that they have a library or anything like that. So that's why we focus on them. But for Read to Learn to operate, we have a sustainability model called the Book Drive Store. So this is where I author the children's books, the African inspired story books. And also, I wish I had some to show you, but anyway, maybe one day. But also,
you can send me pictures. I can always like put them on the whatever.
Okay, perfect. That is in my character that I'm different, and even all my characters are always different. But we also use stories to advocate for disability and inclusion. So that different characters, they're telling all these fun stories and all these cool stories and all. But you find one will be blind, one will be deaf, maybe one will have vitiligo, albinism. They're different. Why? So that kids can grow up reading and seeing that we all don't look the same.
Yes.
But also that builds empathy and consideration when they come across people who don't normally look like them. Then also too, for kids who come from these communities, if they who look like this. Imagine when you have vitiligo and you open a book and there are also characters who look like you. Yeah. So that's the beauty of our sustainability model. It's on authorship on those books. And then we've also introduced now a reading app. Then we have what we call production stores. So the communities that Read to Learn works under, we employ parents and train them, and they produce toys and games that promote literacy and numeracy, play-based teaching. Yeah. So that's how the two models work. But our focus is introducing all children. That's why you see with the Book Drive Store, we work with international schools, private schools, and middle-class families and above. Because for us, a child is a child and a book is a book to a child. It doesn't matter what environment, what socio-economic background they come from. They all react the same, And we're also very key to know that even parents who can afford to take their kids to all these kinds of schools, they also want their children to have a reading culture.
Yes.
So they pay for that, and then we invest that into the operations of a non-profit to be able to run and make sure that also kids who can't afford these services, they get them at free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow,
So I
that's
think,
that's 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 really amazing work.
thank you.
I worked under a USAID project, a funded project called Early Grade Reading, and
Mm-hmm.
we used to go and assess kids in the villages, yeah. And you'd find we used to assess kids in P3 and P5, and you would talk to a child in P5. Like you said, many of them in these communities are way older because they probably start school early, late, or
Mm-hmm.
they have repeated a lot of classes. But in
Mm-hmm.
many cases, you know how like we used to do like the assessment of like the sounds, yeah, the sounds of letters and how to combine them and reading. And it would be so heartbreaking, man. Sometimes you see a kid, they're like 15 or 13 years
Yeah.
old in P5, P3, and they don't even know like they only know A, E, I, O, U. They can't
Yeah.
sound like the normal letters, they can't read. It would be so heartbreaking because in my mind, I'm thinking, by the time this kid gets to P7, man, you reach a point where you're like, let me just give up, this thing is not meant for me, because
Yeah.
not only can't
Yeah.
you read, you can't even speak the language.
Yeah.
So it's harder. Are you also writing these books in local languages, or are they also are they only in English?
So for the written books, they're only in English, but then on the app is multilingual. So we're trying to incorporate local languages and
Different,
also key
yes, yes.
dominant languages across the continent. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But for the written books, they
Man.
are all in English. Since, I mean, even in Uganda right now, in most countries that I think I'm operating in, the struggle for the children is to read and comprehend in English because they're being taught in English and they can't read and comprehend it. So the stories focus on that. But the
Yes, yes,
trainings,
yes.
because they are delivered by young people from the communities, so a literacy champion who is 13 will be teaching kids who are maybe 2 to 6, yeah? So because that champion is from that community, they are able to deliver the training with a mix of English and the local language.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes,
because they
yes,
speak the
yes.
language within that community. Yes,
You
but
said
the
in the
material,
countries. Are you beyond Uganda? Which other
yeah, at the
countries are you
moment
doing
in
this?
Uganda, we're scaling to Ghana and Cameroon as well.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yes.
I completely, like, I have respect for people who learn a language at an older age, because I didn't have an experience like yours, but I have been trying to I came here and learned German, yeah.
Yeah.
And man, when you're trying to
I
communicate,
can't even
when you're trying
imagine.
to communicate, someone looks at you like you're dumb and stupid. And there's this meme we had. I was working for this company. I was working for this company, and in the company we were trying to help expats, yeah, who come in here from English speaking countries, and we were trying to help them to adjust here. And we had this, like, on our social media, we posted this link. It's like from, I don't know if you know Modern Family. No, Modern Family. There's this South American lady who speaks, like, she's from Spanish
Gloria,
speaking country.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And there's a part where she said, "I wish you knew how smart I am in Spanish."
Yeah.
Like, I related so much to that, because when you, like, imagine, like, you go into a community, or you're trying to speak to people, and you literally try to even order something. Like, I worked at a cafeteria, and people would give me orders, and I would feel like they're speaking over some language from
Um,
above. I don't know. I couldn't even get, like, the simplest stuff. It really could have affected my confidence so much. But I came from this character of, I would struggle, but
yeah.
that makes me understand so much how important it is for a child to learn how to read. Because let me tell you, that thing not only affects your confidence, it can affect how you, like, it can affect everything else.
Your life,
Affect
yeah.
everything else. If you go to class and they tell you to stand up and read out loud, and you can't put two and two together, man, you might be, those kids who they would, like, you join the school, and that joke, like, about you becomes like your identity throughout the whole school. Like, they call
Yeah.
you some funny names. Even the teachers, and most many cases, our teachers are also not really very patient with kids who are like this. They don't really look at your story of where you've come from.
No,
They just see, hey, you
imagine.
should know how to read by now. So that's something that until I came here to learn a new language, that's when I started to respect people, man, who do not speak certain languages. I was like, yo, you can't even pronounce bread in a certain, like, you twist your tongue in all ways, and the person teaching you is like, it's easy. And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
it's not.
No, it's
Even
even
in
have to look at
English,
you like you're dumb.
even English itself, like, there's a time I was like, how we have our own way of pronouncing certain things, like certain letters. Like, you can, like, the American, the British, and then there's the Ugandan one. And so there's this one time I was speaking to this guy, he's British, and I'm like, Earl, Ali. Like, I kept saying Ali, because that's how we say. And then he kept saying, what? Like, everyone kept saying, what word is that? And he was like, I don't understand what you're saying. I'm like, man, I am educated, and this word is a word. So I was like, it really made me sit down, and I'm like, there's more than 4 people here. Some of them don't even speak as good English as I do, because they were coming from South America or whatever it is. So they basically just could speak English or could pronounce the words better than me, but I knew better English than them. But I couldn't say that word properly. Like, even up to now, every time I say that word, I'm like,
In your head.
exactly. So I reached out to my friends. Like, that day, I got onto my phone and I texted my friends. I was like, "There's no way this guy is challenging my English, man. I know English." So I go in the group chat and I tell these guys, "You guys, how do you pronounce this word?" And everyone was saying it the same way I was saying it, like
Yeah,
Ali.
then you're like, see?
I wake up early in the morning, and I'm like, "So what are these guys saying?" I went on Google. I put in the word, and it turns out the R has to be pronounced. So these are things you can learn. These are things that you can be corrected by, like, you can be corrected when you're younger, for you to pick out some
Yeah.
of these mistakes. But at the same time, if I am old and I can't pronounce it, then that can easily put my confidence down, because someone is telling me, man, you can't speak English because you cannot pronounce. I just told the guy, dude, like, I just told the guy I was colonized, man. I didn't choose this language. don't expect me to be fluent in it. I told him, colonizer, I didn't choose this language for myself. I am Amtoro.
You projected it on me.
Yeah, it was projected on me, but I really understand how, from what you're explaining, it's really, really important. And there's that aspect of the people who are able to be able to help the ones who are down. I like that. Do you also do, like, book drive? Do you collect books, or all your books are written by you guys?
No, we also collect a lot of books under the foundation. They are called donator book campaigns, different kinds of donations, and we also work with the Community Libraries Association. Whenever they receive donations, we get donations from them. Because we want it to
Yeah.
be a mix, because I told you ours, the ones that we author under the store, they have a particular theme and focus area. They have to
Yes,
be
yes.
African and authentic and all. But we also buy from other writers that are African writers. But when it
Yeah.
comes to donations, we leave that to be a variety. As long as, it meets, I can't say variety because sometimes people have different agendas.
I
So
know.
there's certain books
Yes,
we won't
yes, yes. That's
yeah.
true. That's true. Yeah, yeah. A book
Yeah, but
can
as long as the
literally
book is good.
change. Yeah, can really impact someone's way of thinking.
Yeah, so as long as the message is appropriate for the child and is not trying to spread any agenda or anything, then yeah, we do receive donations. Yeah,
Yeah,
because it's good in
that's
a library to have
pretty
a
cool.
variety.
Yes, that's pretty cool. Like, I would also love. My husband is a better reader than I am. I kind of always leaned. I when I was in primary school, we had a library, and we had, like, a library day. I always went and I would read books. I even still remember most of the stories. But
Oh,
the
that's
thing
nice.
is, then when I left that school, I went to another school in secondary school that didn't have a library. So, and we didn't have library days, or, like, they didn't encourage in any way. So my passion for reading went away. When I went into literature, and I'm one person who easily, like, when I hear a story, I imagine it. It's like I'm watching a movie. I imagine it in my head, and I build all these, like, characters in my head, which is really good for children to imagine things, even for
Yeah.
adults. And I remember when we were doing, like, in senior 3, I remember we were doing, like, literature. I joined literature, and I just didn't have the interest in reading the book because I hadn't been reading from, like, I think from, like, P6. Our libraries, no, P7, like S1, P7, we didn't really read that much, like, to have library days. So, the books that we have too many notes from class already, that reading a book is like, in my free time, I just want to play. I just want to do this. And I realized when I was doing literature, it was always a burden. Like I felt like it was so much of a huge burden. I really loved the class. I loved literature, but I didn't have that time to sit down and read this book. However, it was easy for me to conceptualize the book. So what I would do is I would go to a friend who is really good at reading, and I tell them, tell me the story. Like
What
I'll
you
just
read.
be like, yeah, tell me what happened to Romeo and Juliet. And then through that, I would debate with them. I'll be like using the questions they would ask us. I'll be like, yeah, but why did she say this? Why did she say this? And I would find like I would understand more by that. And the exam would come and I would perform much better than this person who read
Who
the
read the
book.
book?
Yes. So it went on at uni, we were given notes. There's a whole culture of notes, I noticed. Like
Yep.
they dictate for us notes throughout our school days, or they write them on the board. So that doesn't force us to read. Now, when I came to do my master's here, man, dictation, telling you, like I would be in class ready to take notes, and the guy is just giving you points, and he says, okay, this is a reading material, read that. And I'm
Yeah.
like, huh? Reading material. Then you would find yourself reading some stuff, and I'm doing political science, so there are some words which are really complicated. You have to Google them so that you can understand, because even just one word can make you fail to understand the whole sentence. And then my husband, luckily, he loves to read. So when we got married and we moved in together, he was always like ordering books. And I found myself, I was like, I actually love reading books. I just don't have, when I'm reading it and someone walks in and distracts me, I put it down and I'm like, choose, like I'm done. But if I'm reading and I'm around a person like him who is reading, I find myself reading so many books. And
Yeah.
these books kind of really help me always. Like right now, I've been telling you about these books I've read. That's what even led me to this question of what happened to you. Because when I read that book, I wasn't just reading it just for the sake. Like I realized if you read books that actually interest you, yeah, because I
You
got
enjoy
that book because I was listening to a podcast with this woman who was sharing about learning about yourself, and she's like, you should read the book What Happened to You. So I read it because I needed the information there. Then I found myself reading autobiographies and all that stuff. So what you're explaining is if
Yes, I
you
really
are
love
a specific kind of person, for instance, if you're an albino, you are a child who is poor, you are a child who has any, like you're lame, you're blind, and someone tells you there's this book, you might learn from it. You
Yeah.
don't go at it as I'm just going to read. Your
No.
interest is much higher
Yeah.
because you are there to pick something out of this book. And I think when as a literacy, like I don't want to say the word because I think I might say it wrong. As a person who is writing books, as an author, I wanted to say literarian or literary or whatever it is. I don't think it's a word, but I wanted to create one. But as an author of a book for children, what you've said is very key because it's very, very important for books to not be just written to tell stories, but for
Yeah.
books to represent the minority, to be inclusive, basically.
Yeah.
What you're doing is to be inclusive, and this is sustainable. This child, like, can keep their book and give it to, like, the next generation.
Yeah.
This is a book that is going to be used by a person in the future because it's not just telling a story, it is representing an individual. And I love that. Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
amazing. Yes.
No, it's
Okay,
really nice.
Margot, I don't want to take a lot of your time. I just wanted to ask you if you can speak to a word, a woman out there, a girl out there, maybe even adults, some of us who are still, okay, I don't think I'm still in that category anymore. I have friends who don't like to read.
Yeah.
They always say, man, just summarize for me the book.
Oh my God.
Tell us from your experience, in your conclusion, why it's really important for a child to learn how to read, and even for us adults, why it's important for that reading should be part of our culture.
I think even for me, you've said something that's really beautiful there is when you mention that find something that is relatable. Yeah. You see, even with kids, you can't, like, most people say, oh, I bought this many books for my child and they're not reading the books. And my question is, did you go to the library with them? Did you find what interests them? Because you might be buying books that are to do with swimming, castles and what, and maybe your child, yeah, she's a girl, and she loves trucks. So imagine if you went to
Yes.
the bookstore together and you ask your child, pick out the books that interest you. All you have to guide is that they're on their level, yeah? And also not too much on their level of reading, because you find a 6-year-old who is mature enough to read a biography in
Yes.
terms of their reading
Yes.
level. So then
Yes.
when you
Yes.
limit them and say, no, you're 6, you cannot read that unless it's inappropriate, there is no reason why you should deny that. Then, like you said,
Yes.
like find something that is relatable. So even for children, it has to be relatable. Instead of you going to the bookstore and buying all these books, go with your child, engage with them, ask them, so what do you like reading about? Or this month, should we set a topic? So I read this, you
Yes.
also read this, and then we can discuss it and make it fun. But my message as to why people should read, it's very clear. I mean, like, your mindset, the way you think, the way you reason, the way you speak, the way you articulate yourself, your confidence level, your perspective of the world and views,
Yeah.
seeing people and appreciating people. Sometimes you will never find these people who don't, they'll never be in your environment. But when you read and expose yourself to this, it opens your mind. It changes the way you
Yes.
think, the way you reason, everything about you. So imagine giving that to a child. So that compared with a phone, like knowing, oh, my child knows how to use a computer. But imagine if your child can read any book, and they can imagine, they can dream, they can picture. Even as an
Yes.
adult, you can be, I'll give an example. Maybe you're going through like a relationship turmoil or something, yeah? And you've
Yeah.
been
Yeah.
dating somebody who is not right for you. When you're a reader, after that experience, there are certain things that you will do. Like maybe instead of going and doing this, you pick up a book and learn about PSD after a
Yes.
relationship, or you learn about
Yes.
different things. But
Yeah.
your mind, like the way you always think about things, is very different. Then the way you say
Yeah.
it when you're doing your masters, when they ask you to go and do research on this, you're more excited
Yes.
and
Yes.
open,
You
like,
don't find it as
ooh,
a burden. You're
yeah, I
right.
get to
Yeah.
read, I get to find this. So it's more exciting.
Yes.
So that's
Yeah.
something that is tough to build when you're an adult, but with consistency you can. And then
Yes,
for a
actually,
child,
reading is something that you can become better at. It's
yeah, you have
something
to
that you
be
don't. It doesn't
consistent.
start out easy. Yeah,
No,
yeah,
even sometimes I always tell people, like, sometimes just read a page a day. Like, just say, in 3 months, I'm going to read one book, even if it's the tiniest book like this. But you'll start from there. I don't know if you've read Atomic Habits, but it kind of like explains that whole process. Like, break it into something small that you get
yes,
excited to do.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Like a
that's,
reading goal. You're like, today I want to read like 1 page or 2 pages,
yeah,
and
you don't
yeah,
have to
you have
read a lot.
accomplished that goal.
Yes,
Yeah,
and you say every Wednesday at 8 p.m., I'll read one page. So then you automatically rewire your mind to know, and your mind switches
yes,
very much. It will know every Wednesday
yeah,
you find yourself looking for that book. So it starts as little like that, but for me, reading is very important. I know people say, I'll see everything on TikTok, I'll see everything on Twitter, but that will not give you the perspective that books give you. The
yes,
books
yes,
change your world, and they just, I mean, they make you a better human, I feel like. Yeah.
yeah. Before, I know I said we were closing, but you just made me think of one thing.
Yeah.
How challenging is it right now to encourage kids to read in an era of YouTube, and in this whole era of, man, I can get all this information on TikTok or on YouTube. Is it something that you find that is challenging? Because I do know that in many cases, if you want to know, like for instance, sometimes I'm not interested in buying the book. I'm getting
Yeah.
into audiobooks right now because I find myself very busy sometimes, and I just want to go through a book but not to like own it, so I can have it on my phone. But I also do know that, like for instance, when you go to YouTube, you can find the author of the book explaining everything that they wrote in the book, and you're like, okay, I
Yeah.
don't need to buy this book. So is this something that you find challenging for some of the kids that you work with, or some of the parents that you're trying to encourage to get their kids to read their books? They find like, yeah, you know what, my child can just watch that movie or just find someone like a podcast or something that's talking about this topic.
Yeah. So I think three things. One, it depends on the community. Some communities, we've been like, the slums and all, and people will ask you, fete twasoma vitabu tetwaliwo, wacho mwana wange yetaaga okusoma vitabu, such comments, eh? Then you also meet a very literate parent. So the illiterate parent will tell you that, me, I didn't read books. Why should
Why
my
would
children
my
read?
child? Yeah.
Then you'll find a very literate parent, very well educated, everything. And this parent will tell you, we're in an era of digital transformation. Me, all I care about is as long as my child knows how to use the phone, knows how to
IT.
use the remote. Have you seen my child? They're 5 years old. They can switch on the TV, switch it off.
Yes.
What is the use of books? Yeah? We are in an age where
A digital era.
even
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
parents themselves, they're encouraging their child by 3 years old. They're teaching them how to make TikTok and what you understand. So
Yeah.
those are the challenges. Then the third one that I think for me is solving it, and this has to be a cooperation from both parents and on our side, is the environment that you create for your child determines the response you get from your child and the kind of
Yes.
human being that you bring into this world. Environment, if we pay key to it, is very, very important and crucial when we're raising our children. I'll give you an
Yeah.
example. Most of the kids that I told you come to the book drive store, they come from very well-to-do families. They all have phones, iPads, all these big screens. They're used to this. When they come to the book drive store, no phone, no iPad. We've never said that there's no phone, there's no iPad, and they come with their phones in the bags. Yeah, but when they walk in, there's no one on the phone. There's no one on
Wow.
the iPad. The
Yeah.
whole
That's a
place is
yeah.
surrounded by books, is surrounded by toys, libraries, and all. And then there are carpets to sit down. If not, there is a creative corner to do some art and all. So when they come in, these kids, like funny enough, is that they will be here from morning up to 1 p.m., 2 p.m. They will not have touched their bag. They will not have looked for their phone, nothing. But the
Wow.
moment they see their parent come, they run to their bag like, oh my God, I forgot about my phone. So then
Yes.
it shows you
Wow.
that the environment.
That.
So
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
a parent, it's the decision of the parent, to say, one, if you're not a literate parent, it's to say that me, I was unfortunate. I didn't read books, but I want a better future for my child. So you make the deliberate decision to do better. Then
Yeah.
as a literate parent, you know that, okay, we are in a digital era and all, but then because I understand the effect and I've educated myself on the results of this on my child,
Yeah.
I'm going to create an environment that does this, this, and this. So it's
Yes.
simple
Yes.
things, just like creating a reading corner in your child's room.
Yeah.
Somewhere
Yeah.
in the sitting room, somewhere in the corner, moderating TV time. Kids, they are naturally born, to follow and be guided. So if
Yeah.
you say
That's true.
Saturdays we watch TV for 1 hour, they'll go out and play. But if you leave it
Yeah.
unregulated, then they will just enjoy it without any limitations. So the
Yeah.
environment, it depends on you as a parent to say, intentionally, this is what I
Yeah.
want for my child, this is what I see them, and then you create the environment that allows that. Because if it
Yeah.
wasn't the case, I swear to God that they would come here and sit here and be on their
And be
phones.
on their phones. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
But we were
Yeah.
shocked when we found out that they have phones in their bags, because we were like, what? And they don't check them. And their parents always say at home it's a fight to get off the phone. They're always on the phone, always on the phone. The environment. You regulate the
Yes. Yes.
environment, you get different results. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that even applies to adults because for me personally, I don't know, I read more books because my husband is always reading books. And I was like, you know what? Back in the day, I'll be like, I'll just watch the movie. But then for him, he's like, I need to read the book. Eventually, I was like, let me just read some of these books that you're reading. And I would find, I'm like, wow, these books are actually really informing me so much because, it even builds, like you said, the confidence when you're speaking to other people and you say something like, I read this book and this and this and this and this. The person can be like, interesting. Okay, tell me more. It gives you not only like a reference point, but it also builds your confidence in conversations. When you're having conversations with other people, it helps you, like a child, to easily talk to their parent and be like, yes, I read this in a book, you shouldn't do this and this and this and this. Or if the
Yeah.
book is saying there has to be inclusion, if the child sees their parent doing the opposite, then the child can easily tell the parent, man, I read this book and it was saying we have to love people who are different from us.
Yeah.
So it really gives this child a perspective of the world. That's really
Yeah.
amazing. I really, really hope that every person could allow their child to experience the culture of reading. And
I
thank you
think
so much for being able to do that for our kids in Uganda and I hope that you can go through different countries and spread out. Yeah. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Mago. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. I was really enjoyed this conversation. It was a really fun conversation to have. A special thank you to you, Mago, my guest. I am very pleased to have had this conversation with you. Thank you for all the work that you are doing, and I do know that you're going to do much bigger things because you are definitely a force of nature. To all my listeners, if you made it until the end, or if you're listening to this, you did make it until the end. Thank you so much for giving a space to Mago to share her story. And I hope that if you are someone who doesn't love to read, you are probably going to pick up a book today and start doing some reading. If you are a parent who was a child and you have only been letting them watch movies and TikTok videos, then maybe, hopefully, this made you to rethink your decision, and you will start to let your child do some reading. Or maybe you can go check out the Book Drive store, which Mago has talked about. Until next time, that was it for today. We'll meet again next week, same time, same place, to hear more incredible stories. So please go out and read books. Please help me spread the word by sharing our episodes with your friends, family, and followers. Let's amplify the voices of women, break barriers, challenge stereotypes, and create a network of support and empowerment. Together, we can bring about positive change and make this world a better place for all. This is She Center, the female podcast, where women's stories matter. I love you all. God bless.